Hi, and welcome to my tutorial on doing rock and metal bass using only free plugins and impulse responses. So I'll play you what the DI bass sounds like, and then I'll turn the processing on and you'll see what difference that it makes. So what I've done here is a fairly typical approach of splitting the bass and processing the lows on one sort of track and processing the highs on another. And then finally there's a compressor on the end that's compressing both of them at the same time. So let's start with the low track first. So usually your lows you want to be a little bit cleaner sounding, and the highs are generally more dirty. So the first plugin in the chain is on both low and high as it happens, is Bass Professor Mark II, which is a fantastic sort of bass processing plugin by Sonic Anomaly, which are sadly defunct now, but you can still get both the JS version and a Windows VST version of the plugin. Links in the description as always. So what I've done on that is I've turned the high bass down since this is the low track, turned the treble way down since this is the low track, up the fullness and articulation a little bit, and increased the low bass a little bit, and added the sort of automatic processing to an extent, the Professor mount, and the dirt a little bit. So disabled, and then enabled. So you're definitely getting that sort of chunky, sort of clunky sort of sound you want out of that. So second on the low track, we have another different free plugin. So this is by August Rose Audio, as it says. So I've got the IR section disabled because I'm using my own IR, and the growl part makes it a bit too distorted, particularly for the low section. So I've got that turned off, but I do have the hot section turned on. And I've got the bass about midway and the treble turned all the way down. So here's what this sounds like. So you could even, if you wanted to, change the mix knob there and make it so that it's a little bit less grimy, but I like it around about there. So I'll add these last two plugins at the same time because the MV meter is just gain staging to bring the volume down to a bit normal sort of level. And in this one, all I'm doing is loading a Science IR that's a 6x10 cabinet with an SM57. Nothing really too unusual there. And I do use exactly the same IR on the high track as well. Although you don't have to, you could use something different, but I just thought, well, let's make it simple. So I'll do without the IR. So as you'd realise, that cleans it up substantially. So getting onto the high track, we've got Bass Professor Mark II again. Set up a little bit differently to the last time. Professor and Dirt are similar-ish sort of levels. Maybe a little bit more on Professor this time. And Dirt, I haven't got a lot on there, but that's because I'm adding plenty of Dirt with what's coming later, so I don't really need to add it there. That's a bit too much otherwise. Cutting down the sub and the low bass a lot because this is a high track. Boosting the high bass, boosting the treble a bit. Fullness and articulation and presence up a little bit as well. And so this is what that sounds like before and after. Okay, next up we've got the sort of tube screamer-ish sort of boost pedal by Ignite Amp. So I've got a little bit of drive on this, not a heap. I've got the tone all the way to that side. Levels down, but I do have the boost enabled. Before and after once again. You can see why I didn't need the drive any more than that. That's already dirtying it up quite a lot. Then next we have another Ignite Amps. So this is a bass amp sim because it's high track, bass is down, mid is about middle and treble up a little bit. Not using a lot of gain because it's pretty dirty already coming into it. I've got deep and bright turned on, so that seems to sound good. And this is what it sounds like before and after with that. As you would probably have realised, things always sound a bit weird until you put an impulse response on them. And speaking of which, the final thing is the impulse response. Let's do a before and after with that. So it's dirty, but not quite as dirty as it sounded before adding the impulse response. So the next step is blending those, and it actually sounded pretty good just straight off without any changes to me. So this is the low and the high together. So then the final step was adding a compressor, and I used the Molotov one by Tokyo Dawn Labs because this is the perfect situation where you want a more colourful sort of compressor rather than a more neutral sort of one. And all I really did was left everything on default and just dialed in the threshold so it was getting around about 2-3 or so dB of gain reduction. That was that. So before and after with that. That's how I would go about getting a modern sort of metal and bass sound with free plugins. If there's any ways that you prefer to do it, especially with free plugins, let me know in the comments below. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.